Paul Vixie, would you like to make a comment on this?
We hijacked all of them.
I am Paul Vixie, Internet Systems Consortium. We have done an implementation of open source CPE that included the AFTR implementation. We're also working very closely with Jim Geddes and Dave Tott, who have an open source CPE. It is, of course, all Linux-based, but it's our hope to unify the CPE sector sort of in the same way Linux did for the PC sector, so that there will be a sort of a portable common framework of features and ABIs and APIs available pretty much no matter where you're buying your CPE from. It's a long-term hope, obviously. But we've noted that there is a terrible sort of long-tail upgrade problem on CPEs. I mean, what you're talking about here is that the CPE at people's houses doesn't have IPv6, and that makes a rolling upgrade of the internet hard. But it turns out there are a lot of other things that they don't have. And for those of you not in the CPE business, I'll remind you that the software is usually out of date and has critical defects before it goes into cardboard. But the idea of being able to update this software after the customer holds it was not part of the original plan for most CPE vendors. That may be different, that may be untrue of the vendors represented on this stage, but you're a self-selected set because you're at the V6 Congress. For the most part, it's burned into ROM, or there isn't room in the EEPROM for a larger version or a second version, and it's just a hopeless morass. Alain has been working with us on some of the AFTR-based work, which is why he knew to ask me to speak on this topic. See me at the break if you want to talk more.
Thank you, Paul. So that leads us to our next question. Can we buy an IPv6 CPE today? So I think, Claire, you want to address this one. Please, Claire.
Yeah, but Claire, before you do,
yes.
Can I just talk as a human being?
Wow.
Whoa. This is the wrong question. When can we go to the shops or even the lease market and not see any V4 only? Because there's a subtle difference here. The self-selection comment that Paul made is brilliant. We're all here self-selected as being interested in V6. We actually need to address the rest of the marketplace, and both suppliers and maybe buyers who are not here, which are the people that are still shipping, use the right word, cost-effective V4 only CPE. And we need to take that out of the marketplace so this becomes a default. Sorry, that's just as a
it's a very good point. So let me rephrase my question to Claire as there's a beginning and an end of this thing. Yes. So hopefully we are already at the beginning in some places, some sectors, and how to go to the point where you just get a CPE from your ISP or from the retail store and it just works, to use Chiara's phrase.
The Linux CPE devices are basically available in the retail market. So because the easy process, so we don't have all the CPE devices with IPv6 support. So I believe in the near future there will be mainly one out of most of the CPE devices will support IPv6. So then there will be like only IPv4 support tag on it, and the rest of it is IPv6 supported.
Who else wants to address this question?
So I think another perspective here, and I do agree with the the kind of structuring of the question. It all starts with making sure that a couple things happen from our point of view. We've been working with the chipset vendors for years, probably 5 years at this point, and it's the point when those chipset vendors are shipping V6 on by default, and it's really available across a wider range of silicon-based products that we'll find that people who build on top of them, even who don't know about V6, will automatically get V6 for free, right? So it's all about simplifying how, in this case, on one angle, how the people who sell us products as consumers or even as providers, the ingredients that they have available to them. There are many products that were out there in the field today that are just very old. So the perspective that we've taken is making sure that we work with the chipset vendors to make sure that anything new that comes out of the factory has all the V6 ingredients to make things work. We've also taken a lot of effort and gone back to existing CPE that is deployed today, in many cases, substantial volumes in the millions, and making software available for them for upgrade to introduce support for V6. From our point of view, we're trying to kind of squish it from both ends, really.
Thank you.
Well, today we have a portfolio starting from very low end, like, I don't know the price, and my product manager is not in the room, so I can say anything now. But let's say 30, 40 euros, kind of 11N wireless device, up to a VDSL with voice, FXS, and all the things. Older systems which are capable, have enough memory that are being upgraded during the course of the year. So I'd say by plus minus the end of the year, there should be no V4 only software released anymore, unless it's maintenance projects for things existing in the field, which we can of course not just overlook. But all new platforms are being enabled by default, but the ISP is our chief, is our customer, and if he says we disable it on rollout, we can only say please don't, but in the end he's paying the bills.
Yep.
So, Mark, to answer the question?
Hi. Hello, microphone, there we go. I do have a question for Wouter in a minute, but on this topic, and maybe Ole was about to say it, I'm going to steal your thunder, sorry. Between Claire's company, D-Link, and ours, Cisco, in the retail industry, my product research guys told me that we make up 29% of the marketplace worldwide. And we both committed to IPv6 enabled by default in the products. And you're starting to hit on it, that's the difference in retail. I don't care if Martin can go find a box with a V6 logo and go configure it and turn it on, right? And that's the state of V6. Even the V6 ready logo CPEs last year and the year before and the year before and the year before, none of them had it on by default until about mid last year. They started showing up in June. I know with 4200 that was the case, and perhaps D-Link. That's the big shift. Because not only does it mean the user is going to enable it, it will not have to enable it, so it just happens, but it also means the vendor is standing behind it as something they're willing to support, right? And that was a big deal with the world launch to get that commitment to enable by default. And hopefully with, the Netgears and the so on and so on and so on, we'll get more than 29%.
So thank you, Mark. I think this is really a good point that you're making here to talk about this. It actually represents a large volume of a new market, which brings actually to my question number 6. This is great news for all the new gear that we are going to buy. But the question is this upgrade process going to be only for the new customers or people who buy the new gear, or we as an industry should go and be more proactive and go replace those existing ones? So I've heard that there is 1 billion CPE out there in the world. Multiply this by, I don't know, 30 euro. That's quite a lot of money. So who will pay for that? Should we ask a subscriber to go and pay themselves for upgrading this? Maybe not. Should we ask a service provider to support this cost? Should we ask our governments to give us coupon to buy those things, the same way that they bail out banks or they bail out auto industry, or they provided coupon to buy the digital to analog TV converters? Should we get some government involvement in that? Question to all of you.
So if I can address this. Well, I've been running all around the world in all these IPv6 conferences, and I heard lots of operators saying and blaming the CPE for not deploying IPv6. Rubbish. It's not true. CPEs are here. Operators just need to buy them. They need to put the money where their mouth is. So, on who has the problem here? The subscriber? Probably no, right? Subscriber just wants their Facebook and Google to show up on the screen and be done with it. So who has the problem? ISP has the problem because they will run out of IPv4 space and they will probably have to invest multi-million dollars in some big machines to translate stuff. And so I think ISPs should stop searching for excuses and just jump in the water up front. Right.
Can we borrow your checkbook? You ready? You ready? I mean, seriously, yeah, just start sending me checks, no problem.
So I don't think anyone expects anyone to change all the CPEs at once. At least start with the new ones, and that's what we're trying to do with the World IPv6 launch, right? And then, how long are existing CPEs? What's the lifetime of an existing CPE? You know, how long does it take before the natural replacement cycle will have taken care of the problem?
Sadly, too long. And in many cases, we see CPE in some cases last a decade in the network, right? But I'm tending to gravitate to where Ole is going, right? I mean, I think the first key is to use us as an example. We've gone back to a significant population of devices that are already in the network today that are firmware upgradable to introduce support v6. Many of these devices are $20 or less in cost to the subscriber. But hold on one second. But the key is also making sure that anything new, to Mark's point and your point, that you add into the network also has support for v6 and ideally on by default. This is the beginning, right? Over time, what will happen is you'll have atrophy, you'll have devices that break, that get replaced. And I'm not trying to avoid the topic. I think Alain has a good point in that it's at some point, the topic of how aggressive does this replacement have to be will become a very pointed discussion, okay? I just don't think it's 2012 right now.
So I got an email from my ISP 2 weeks ago saying that now we're going to charge you an extra lease per month for having the CPE, and that's an SP managed CPE that they give me. The reason they gave for this was because of global warming. The amount of thunderstorms made that, the climate change made, CPEs blow out quicker. And I thought that was a fantastic excuse to get it.
So thanks to global warming, we are going to replace the CPE faster and get IPv6 quicker. That's great.
So if I may add, what happened in my country was our incumbent telecom decided to go for IPv6, obviously. And what they did was very simple. They put IPv6 requirements as mandatory in their tender for CPE. And that made lots of CPE vendors just being unable to sell CPEs to our incumbent telecom. And that made them think a bit, saying, wow, the big telecom is not buying our CPEs anymore just because we don't support IPv6. Is this is this an alarm? Yes, it was. And now today, our telecom decided to go for one vendor from Greece. They support IPv6 out of the box. It's enabled by default. And they're shipping out new CPEs enabled.
But that's for new CPE. What about the old ones? Did that particular ISP decided to go and replace the old ones?
No, they will gradually deploy, replace the old ones. But the old ones are so bad that they die prematurely by default. So they are replacing them quite quickly.
So Jan, it sounds like your service provider put their money where their mouth is.
Yes.
Okay.
That's very good.
So what are you complaining about?
Any more comments from our panelists on this?
Maybe
Michael.
just a comment from what I've seen so far in Europe. I think the answer to this question is very much related to how the marketing teams of the service provider want to promote IPv6. And for this, I mean, I saw different things between even a very large service provider who may be more conservative and doesn't really want to make it a real differentiator, whereas some other service provider may put it in their, in top of the top position of the feature they are actually selling. So, and if the service provider is more conservative, I mean, I don't see why you should, even replace the legacy CPE users, right? It's more a marketing strategy that the service provider should have. Yeah.
Carl?
I have one small comment to add. In Belgium, they say you can hit everybody in its wallet. So if you want to enforce them to buy a new box, give $1 or €1 discount on his contract, and it will pay itself back.
Well, that's an interesting approach.
They do understand that language.
Yeah. So there's also the economics not just of the CPE but of the carrier as well. Because if you look at the expenditure that potentially could go into CGN, carrier grade NAT expenditure, into potentially having to acquire IPv4 addresses on the market, in the marketplace, and you compare that to the cost of CPE upgrade or an incentive program for CPE upgrade. Unfortunately, I know the math in the back of my head is, you know, the finite number of CGN boxes versus the very large number of CPE skews the math in the direction I don't want to see. But the reality is that the formula is bigger than just CPE expenditure. It's much larger than that.
So just one comment, Martin. You know, and I think it was Mikhail that made this earlier. I think one piece of this is to be, you know, mildly creative in the form of providing incentives to customers, right? So, you know, in the state that we're in right now, you know, operators partnering with their vendor community, creating incentives, making it more attractive for them to upgrade a device now that they would have upgraded anyway. That's a good starting point, right? I mean, I think this will evolve and mature over time, particularly as Martin alludes to, as, you know, addresses, you know, deplete fully and people have to really start to consider alternative approaches. But I think that's a great starting point. That's something that we're actually looking into as well, as working, you know, partnering with our vendors to provide incentives.
Misha?
I think Don has a question for a long time.
Just a second, Misha, and then...
Yeah, as a CGN vendor, I know that we're selling crack and that we keep people on the V4 lifeline. But one thing that we are doing, and I think it all comes down to the IETF standards and all these standards that are there, is that we're basically providing a way to buy time, to look at what is out there and to look at the CPEs, because I have to agree that a lot of the CPEs are not quite ready yet. And a lot of ISPs are not quite ready yet. So it's a way of actually buying time. And one of the things that we also do is to make sure that all the other functionalities and all the other flavors are on the same platform so that you can migrate from CGN to a flavor that fits within your environment.
Thank you. So